Welcome to Heritage Harvest. If these stories matter, subscribe, hit the bell, and share to preserve our heritage. In the early years of the 20th century, potatoes were already one of the most important foods on Earth. They fed factory workers in England, peasants across Eastern Europe, and entire armies moving across the continent. Agricultural authorities believed they understood them completely. Dig a trench, bury the seed, hill the soil, repeat. That was the rule. And yet, scattered across rural Russia, Poland, the Baltics, and parts of northern France, small farmers were doing something that made no sense to the textbooks. They were not digging trenches, they were not planting in rows. They were laying seed potatoes directly on the soil surface and covering them with straw, leaves, and farm waste until the ground disappeared beneath a living blanket. No plow, no hill, no repeated labor. When early agronomists documented these plots around 1905, they expected to find poor yields and disease. What they found instead made them uncomfortable. The plants produced more tubers, larger clusters, and fewer losses. In some cases, yields reached 2 to 3 times that of conventional trench planting on the same land. The soil beneath stayed cool and moist. Disease pressure dropped, labor fell to a fraction, and the system repeated itself year after year without exhaustion. The method looked wrong because it ignored everything modern agriculture was beginning to worship. There was no uniform depth, no bare soil, no clean geometry for machines to follow. Instead, there were layers. Organic matter stacked like a forest floor. Air pockets everywhere. Fungal networks left intact. The potato, a plant that evolved in loose mountain soils and leaf litter, responded by doing what it had always done best when left undisturbed. It spread laterally and upward, forming tubers wherever conditions stayed cool, dark, and oxygen-rich. In traditional planting, hilling soil up around the stems cuts off future growth zones. In the layered system, every new layer of straw became another opportunity. Stolons kept forming, tubers stacked vertically instead of fighting downward through compacted earth. One seed potato no longer fed a single harvest zone. It fed several. By 1910, the problem was no longer whether the method worked. The problem was that it could not be absorbed into the system that agriculture was becoming. Tractors were replacing horses. Fields were being standardized. Machines demanded predictability. Predictability demanded exposed soil and fixed depth. Fixed depth demanded fertilizer to replace what bare soil lost. Fertilizer demanded factories. The layered potato method broke that chain at the very first step. It eliminated repeated hilling, one of the major labor metrics of potato farming. It reduced fertilizer demand because decomposition fed the plant slowly and continuously. It replaced soil disturbance with cover, which preserved moisture and microbial life. And it produced abundance without asking permission from inputs, fuel, or machinery. So it was not banned, it was erased. Agricultural manuals stopped mentioning it. Extension bulletins labeled surface planting unsanitary, then inefficient, without presenting data. The method survived where manuals did not reach, in war gardens, in subsistence plots, in backyards where fuel was scarce and labor mattered. During the World Wars, straw-grown potatoes returned out of necessity. When tractors and chemicals flooded back in, they vanished again. The system demanded speed, visual uniformity, and control. Potatoes became products measured by size and shape, rather than calories and resilience. A method that looked messy, behaved biologically, and refused mechanization had no place. The irony is that everything about the method aligns with modern soil science. Permanent cover moderates temperature swings. Carbon-rich layers hold water like a sponge. Oxygen penetrates freely through straw in a way compacted soil never allows. Soil beneath remains untouched, preserving fungal highways that shuttle minerals directly into roots. Rain hits organic matter instead of bare dirt. eliminating splashback that spreads blight spores. Pests struggle to locate plants without exposed soil cues. Colorado potato beetles lose orientation. Slugs find fewer wet surfaces. Harvest becomes an act of lifting rather than excavation. Layers are pulled aside, and clean tubers appear without damage, without cutting, without loss. This is why modern gardeners who rediscover the method report something strange after the first season. The potatoes succeed, but so does everything planted afterward. Soil that once baked and cracked begins to smell alive. Worm populations explode. Water infiltration improves. Weeds weaken because bare ground never appears. The method restores soil memory. It teaches a lesson agriculture forgot when efficiency replaced resilience. Biology responds to conditions, not force. When conditions are right, effort becomes unnecessary. Yet even this was not the full extent of what disappeared, because in parallel with the layered field method, another approach evolved wherever land itself was limited. In towns, along walls, in courtyards, on the edges of homesteads where every square meter mattered, potatoes were grown above ground entirely. Not as an experiment, but as a system. Containers, sacks, wooden boxes, and woven baskets lined sunny exposures. They warmed faster in spring. They drained reliably. They could be moved when frost threatened or rain refused to stop. Harvest required no tools. When the season ended, the container tipped and food rolled out clean and intact. Modern trials that compare these systems tell a story that mirrors the past. Ground planting under standard methods averages around 4 pounds per plant. Raised beds improve that slightly. Container systems using layered filling consistently push past 7 pounds per plant in the same conditions with the same varieties. That is not because containers are magical, it is because they recreate what potatoes prefer. Loose structure, excellent drainage, controlled moisture, no compaction. When these conditions are met, potatoes stop surviving and start producing. The mistake many make today is assuming any container will work. Early practitioners learned through necessity that size mattered more than volume. Too small and the soil overheated and dried out. Too large and moisture stagnated, wasting material without increasing yield. The sweet spot settled around the size of old feed sacks, roughly 15 to 18 gallons. Enough soil mass to buffer temperature swings, enough depth to support multiple layers of tuber formation, and still light enough to move when needed. Within that volume, 4 seed pieces spaced evenly provided balance. More crowded plantings produced competition, not abundance. The soil itself mattered even more. Heavy garden dirt collapsed into brick inside containers. Successful growers relied on light, springy mixes rich in organic matter. Compost provided nutrition. Structure came from plant fibers, not mineral weight. Water moved through freely, carrying oxygen with it. Excess drained away. Roots breathed. Feeding remained minimal. Slow-release nutrition at planting, a light supplement mid-season if leaves paled, and nothing more. Overfeeding produced foliage, not tubers. Watering followed the same philosophy as the layered field method. Consistency beat volume. Containers dried faster than ground, but mulch changed that equation entirely. A thick cap of straw or leaves reduced evaporation dramatically. Finger checks replaced schedules. If soil felt dry a few inches down, it received a deep soak until water escaped the bottom. If moisture remained, it was left alone. Drainage was protected obsessively. Containers sat on blocks or boards to keep water from pooling. Root rot was not a mystery. It was a result of suffocation. Variety selection followed logic rather than marketing. Early maturing potatoes provided quick harvests for fresh eating. Main crop varieties took longer, but rewarded patience with tubers that stored for months. Both thrived in containers when spacing remained generous. The practice of adding soil gradually around growing stems extended the tuber-forming zone upward, multiplying yield without increasing footprint. Exposure was corrected immediately. Any potato that saw light was buried. Leaves loved sun. Tubers did not. When harvest time arrived, the advantage became obvious. No kneeling, no guessing, no damaged food. Containers tipped and harvests appeared whole. Potatoes were cured properly in cool, dark, airy spaces, so skins thickened naturally. Storage life extended through winter. These were not tricks. They were systems refined under constraint. They valued reliability over spectacle. They valued control over dependence. This brings us back to the question that ties both methods together. Why did they vanish? The final break between these methods and the modern world did not come from a single law, a single ban, or a single authority. It came from something quieter and far more effective: education. Once agricultural schools standardized what proper planting looked like, anything that fell outside those diagrams stopped being taught. And once something stops being taught, it doesn't need to be outlawed. It simply fades. By the mid-20th century, the idea that potatoes could be grown without digging deeply into the ground sounded reckless to anyone trained in the new systems. Rows became doctrine, hilling became ritual, bare soil became professionalism. Organic cover was treated as clutter, not structure. The goal shifted from feeding households to feeding supply chains, and supply chains do not tolerate improvisation. The layered surface method failed every metric that mattered to industry, while succeeding at every metric that mattered to biology. It could not be scaled predictably across thousands of acres with machines. It produced potatoes of varied sizes instead of uniform commodities. It required observation rather than intervention. It removed the need for fertilizer factories, fuel, and seasonal labor spikes. Most dangerously, it worked whether anyone was selling anything or not. Bag growing carried the same flaw. A sack of soil does not need good land. It does not need perfect weather. It does not need rows, tractors, or chemical correction. It produces quietly, efficiently, and locally. A village growing potatoes in sacks against sun-warmed walls does not need to buy them by the ton later. Independence like that does not fit neatly into post-war agricultural economics. This is why the methods were reframed instead of debated. Instead of publishing counter-data, authorities labeled them unsanitary. Rodents were invoked. Mold was warned about. Rot was exaggerated. None of it held up consistently under controlled trials, but consistency was never the point. Doubt was. Once gardeners were made to feel irresponsible for deviating from the approved method, most complied. Control returned. Gardeners who rediscover the layered method often notice something unsettling after a few seasons. Their soil no longer behaves the way textbooks describe. It stops crusting. It stops compacting. It stops needing correction. Water infiltrates instead of running off. Roots travel deeper and wider. Weeds weaken not because they are fought, but because conditions no longer favor them. Diseases lose momentum because stressed plants are no longer the norm. The system begins to regulate itself. This is not nostalgia. It is ecology. Permanent cover changes everything beneath the surface. Microbial populations stabilize. Mycorrhizal fungi reconnect, extending the plant's effective root system by meters, not centimeters. Worm activity increases, pulling organic matter down slowly instead of mixing it violently through tillage. Carbon remains stored instead of oxidizing into the atmosphere. Over time, the soil becomes resilient rather than dependent. That resilience shows up as yield, yes, but also as forgiveness. Miss a watering, skip a feeding, experience an unusually hot summer. The system absorbs shock instead of collapsing. Bag systems mirror this resilience in a different way. By isolating the growing environment, they remove variability instead of fighting it. Temperature can be moderated by placement. Drainage is guaranteed if containers are raised. Soil structure remains intact because it is never stepped on or compacted. Roots explore freely within a defined space that stays aerated. Harvest does not damage the system because there is no system to destroy. You dump, you collect, you reset. These methods look different on the surface, but they share a philosophy that modern gardening rarely emphasizes. Work with decay, not against it. Cover instead of expose. Trust biological processes instead of trying to dominate them. Accept that control often reduces abundance rather than increasing it. The obsession with bare soil did not come from plant science. It came from logistics. Bare soil dries faster for machinery. It allows visual inspection from a distance. It photographs cleanly. It accepts fertilizer quickly because nothing else is competing. But bare soil is stressed soil. It loses moisture faster. It erodes. It heats and cools violently. It requires constant correction to remain productive. That correction is sold season after season as necessity. Layered potatoes break that cycle entirely. They eliminate repeated hilling, one of the most labor-intensive steps in traditional potato growing. They reduce or remove fertilizer needs. They lower irrigation demand. They replace inputs with observation. That is not inefficiency, that is freedom. The same applies to bag growing when done properly. It is not about chasing record yields or dramatic thumbnails. It is about reliability. A 15-gallon fabric bag, filled with a light mix of potting soil and compost, planted with 4 properly spaced seed potatoes, mulched, watered consistently, and left mostly alone, will produce 8 to 12 pounds of clean potatoes with minimal strain on the body. That will not replace an entire grocery budget. It was never meant to. It replaces dependence at the margins, where control matters most. The layered potato method never failed. The container system never became obsolete. They were incompatible with a world that chose speed over resilience and control over trust. They produced too much with too little, and in doing so, they revealed something uncomfortable. The most efficient systems were not the most profitable ones. If you lay a seed potato on the soil and cover it with life, it will respond. If you give it air, moisture, and patience, it will multiply. It always has. The only thing that changed was whether we were allowed to remember. These methods remain available to anyone willing to practice them. They require no permission, no patents, no supply chains. They reward attention rather than consumption. They scale to a backyard or a field with equal honesty. And once you experience a harvest that requires no digging, no damage, and no dependence, it becomes difficult to accept that this knowledge was ever meant to disappear. So when someone asks why they hid it, the answer is simple. They did not hide potatoes, they hid independence. And systems built on control rarely tolerate methods that return it quietly to the people willing to remember. If this story resonated, if it felt less like a trick and more like a truth you were never supposed to lose, then this is exactly why Heritage Harvest exists. Subscribe for more, and we will catch you in the next one.